Hi, my name is Matt Scott, and I'm a freelance trombone player and teacher in the Atlanta area. Now, with this etude, let's first talk a little bit about breathing. Now, when we're breathing playing the trombone, it's very important that we keep our air relaxed, direct, and consistent. Making sure that we do these three things is going to allow our sound to be nice and full, and these phrases to be less choppy and more forward moving. So one of the things that I tend to hear a lot in young players is I tend to hear things like this. Listen to this first couple phrases. One thing you'll notice is my air was a little bit on the tense side. It certainly wasn't consistent as it was coming away and then surging for each individual note. And then it wasn't very direct either. One thing to help remedy this is to go ahead and play these first 3 bars or so on just a concert F, focusing on having everything ride on one single airstream, just having the tongue tap the back of the top teeth long enough to barely interrupt the flow of air. Do that several times until you're comfortable with your consistent airstream and you're comfortable with that tongue stroke that's barely interrupting the flow of air. Once you've done this and you're comfortable with it, then go ahead and play that same exact figure glissed, only articulating the very first note. And as you're glissing, it's very important that we maintain a fast slide moving at the last possible moment before we change notes. Again, focusing on having everything ride on one consistent airstream and having your slide move as fast as you can when your arm is nice and relaxed at the last possible moment before you change notes. Once you're comfortable with that and you've done that several times, then go ahead and add the tongue back in. Now we're adding a third component. In addition to having our slide moving as fast as we can before we change notes, our tongue needs to move at that exact same time. Sometimes what I hear in a lot of younger players is something that sounds almost like this. A slow slide and a lethargic tongue is going to create a lot of slide noise in between those notes. That's why it's very important that our slide is fast and our tongue is fast as well and consistent. Next, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about over-the-break notes or natural slurs. One thing you might have noticed as you were glissing that is there were some notes like the F to G in the first measure, the A to F in the first measure, the F to C, and the C to A. There are quite a few of them in this etude that come out almost as if you're articulating them when you're not using your tongue at all. Again, what these are called are natural slurs. So as you're glissing them, find out where these notes occur and write a little OTB right in between those two notes. These notes are very important to utilize as trombone players to help us to smooth out legato lines. And finally, let's talk a little bit about phrasing. Now, there are several opportunities in this etude to really move phrases along. And a lot of the times they occur at the very end of measures going into a new measure, such as in measure 2 going into measure 3 going into measure 4. There are opportunities that we can really blow into the next measure. I'll go ahead and play a little bit of the beginning, showing you how we can take measure 2 and blow it into measure 3. As opposed to taking that F into a B flat and having it sound like this. It's a lot less interesting to listen to, and there are quite a few moments throughout this entire etude where we have that ability. And lastly, let's talk briefly about the ritardando at the very end of this etude in the last 2 bars. It's very important that we treat that ritardando as if it's natural and organic, and don't try and make it too much too soon. So have fun and happy practicing.